Hello and welcome to this session of BB Dev Days. I'm Erin Frisby with Blackbaud Customer Success, and I'm excited to introduce our next speaker. Reuben Schmitz is a prospect analyst at Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod, also known as the acronym WELLS, part of the WELLS Center for Mission and Ministry, which is an adult discipleship assisting congregations and called workers in helping individuals grow in their relationship with Jesus and become better equipped to use their unique gifts to bring Christ's love and the gospel message into their daily relationships and activities. So I will turn it over to Reuben to share his insights and help us build a simpler Power BI report. Thank you, Reuben, for sharing your gifts.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, making the time here, and thanks for all of you for joining us today. And I'm hopeful today will work a little better than my last outing. Had some technical issues, but everything seems to be on track, and we'll just keep chugging along. So what we want to do to, and I'll just also start by saying, so I noticed a number of emails there, as I said in the chat. If you'd like my notes, just put your email in the chat, and I'll gather those after we're done and send these to you. So pretty much step by step what I'm going to be talking about. So what I'm talking about, or what I want to focus on today, is really how to create Power BI reports, but not using the standard connectors, and instead using query results out of Raises Edge. And you might wonder, well, why not? Why do that? And so let me just show you what I'm talking about here. If we can get to this. So if you go to in Power BI, as you know, you can go to the data. You can select the Blackbaud connector. And if you do that, you get a bunch of options. You get constituents, events, gifts, opportunities, fundraising. And these all work fine, and encourage you to use those. But the downside is that, one, it's going to collect all this information. And so refresh time is going to be extensive for gifts, for instance. For us, takes it about an hour to refresh the gift list. And it also, these different tables and fields have to be connected by you in the report. And again, that's not a big problem, but it's some extra steps you have to look at. So rather than doing this, what I am going to suggest is that you think about using a query for that purpose. And just to show you what that looks like, let's just go to Raises Edge. And I have to change my screen just a moment. All right, so what you're going to do is in Raises Edge, you're going to start with a query. And conveniently, I have a query that we're going to look at today and use. It's just one record. It's my own, actually. So if there's any confidential data here, I'm not going to be too worried about it. I don't know if I can make that bigger. I can't. But what you'll see, and the text is maybe a little small, but what you can see is that you can pick any query field you want, query output field, I should say, and that's going to be available then in your Power BI report. You don't have to connect it. You don't have to find it. You don't have to look at different tables to get it. It's all going to be in one place, and it's all going to be pre-connected to what you need. And so, for certainly some more complex reports, maybe this won't be appropriate, but for at least most of the ones I use, this actually works really, really well. And it's going to connect information that sometimes can be challenging to get together. So, for instance, if you think of an RENXT list, for instance, you know that if you have an action list, you can't connect gift information. You can't connect a lot of constituent information or the fundraiser information. In a query, you can kind of lump them all together. So I have name. I could put gift information in. I just have the last gift date. I have the prospect information here. I have gift totals here. In using the standard connectors, these would all be different tables. This would be an aggregation I would have to figure out. I can pre-create this information in here, and you could do it at whatever level. If you want a giving for every year, you could do aggregate numbers, the total that, give it that name, and you'd be good to go. So you start with a query. The sorting doesn't matter, but what matters is the results. And you're going to get a query like this that has some basic information. And whatever fields you have here, those are the only ones that are going to be available. So if you're not sure which fields you need, I would grab a few extra, just put them in, or you can always come back and add them in later if you get in your report and say, oh yeah, I really should have that as well. The other thing that you are going to want is the import ID. And if you've heard from other sessions, or the system record ID rather, and the import ID, I always include these just because if you did need them for connecting back to anything in the future, it's just handy to have them. These are the things that are going to relate to other tables and other things if you would need that, or even multiple queries. You could have multiple queries in the same report. And again, these will help connect those to one another. But what you're going to do is you're going to create your query. And again, doesn't matter what the output is in. And I should say this works the exact same way for an export. So export or query, it doesn't really matter. What you're doing is gathering information that we're going to put into SharePoint. And from SharePoint, we're going to pull that into Power BI. And of course, like anything else, there's a couple of steps that are involved. So it starts with the query. But once the query is complete, I bet you my query wasn't showing before, was it? So once the query is complete, we're going to go to admin and we're going to go to queue. Now I use queue. We have queue where I am. There are probably some folks that don't have queue. And so you might ask, well, then can I do this without queue? And the answer is yes. It's going to be less convenient. You would have to manually update this information. Less handy by far. In a couple of months, the query functionality in RENXT will be available. And with that and Power Automate, you could pull the information via that. The query API, the Power Automate flow that pulls in a query of data into SharePoint. But as that isn't completely ready for use yet, I didn't include that here, but that's coming, and that's something that you could certainly take a look at, especially if you don't have queue, or like for us, we're going to be moving away from queue probably in the fairly near future. But what you're going to do is you're going to connect this to the queue. So I have a queue that I use, and as you'll see here, you can have multiple queries running in the same queue, and that's what I have. And I had one here. I found this. So basically, to add one in the queue, you're just going to hit add item. If you've used queue, you probably know how this all works. You're going to add the item. You can let it chug for a minute. Chugging longer than it should. There we are. And again, for me, it's a query. It's I guess a constituent query. It's dynamic. It's going to give me a list. I'm going to find the query. And it's at the bottom. I already have it in, so I'm not going to click it again. But it's the BB Dev Days test query. So I find it there. I check this. I hit OK, and the query shows up here. There are two things that you're going to want to update. When you load this in originally, it's going to say no here for include the header. That's the default. I usually switch that to yes because the headers are helpful. And then you do need to identify the file name. It'll probably put in something that isn't correct. You're going to want to show the file name wherever it is in Raises Edge. And each file, of course, person has a different file that you'll have to look for there. So once you do that, you're just going to save and close it. My queue I have running at every day during the week at 3 in the morning. But you can schedule it for any time you want. You can have it run 7 days a week, 1 day a week. You know, that's just how that works. And of course, you can also have it send you a notification if there's any kind of problem. So you're going to set up the queue. And again, as you can see, I've got a bunch of queries that run every day. So I use this quite a bit. And you're going to, I'm not sure if there's a limit. I haven't hit it yet. So I probably got 20 in here. But yeah, for efficiency, you'll probably want to break it up at some point to do that. But you're going to set that up. The queue is going to run. And what it's going to do then is put a file into SharePoint. And what that does, let me just, SharePoint. I should have had this queued up. It's going to go into a SharePoint file. And let me just screen this. So it's going to go into a SharePoint file, and the SharePoint file, as soon as it opens up, it just goes to a file in SharePoint, and here it is. So I could, just like any CSV file, I could open it up. I can look at it. It's here available. This is the information. Same as what was in the query. Same order, same field, same format. Nothing changes. It's just transferring it from Raises Edge files to SharePoint files. And I guess I skipped a step here. So how did I get it here into SharePoint? Well, to do that, we have to use a Power Automate flow. And I have a copy of this in the notes. You'll see it there. But basically, there's a 5-step flow. It's a reasonably simple flow to find things. You're going to use what's called an SFTP request. And as I'm looking at it today, I realize it's not in the name here anywhere. So how do you know that that's it? As it turns out, this yellow is a sign of the SFTP functionality in Power Automate. But to find it, what you're going to do is just to add an action, and you're just going to type in SFTP, and it's going to give you the options that you're looking for. So there's 2 SFTP requests, and again, SFTP Secure File Transfer Protocol. And I use the ones with the SSH encryption. So that's the SFTP SSH. It's a lot of letters to say. And the ones that we use, the first one, when files are added or modified, this won't show up here because it's not the first one in the thing. But if this was gone, that would show up there as an option. And below it's get file content. If we scroll down, get file content is here somewhere. Right here, get file content using path. Get file. There we are, get file content. So you would just pick the correct one. And if you had to click here first, you could also, here's where you can get file content using path. So same thing is there. So that's how you find these two, because if you just type in when files are added, it won't come up. Just type in SFTP. But you're going to start with this. And what this is going to do is, as soon as there is an update to the file, this flow is going to trigger. And you don't have to do anything with it. It's not connected directly to the queue. But once the queue does its work, it sends new data. Power Automate's always looking, and it says, hey, there's new data. When a file is added or modified, this kicks in. You have to initialize the file name. You have to initialize an email array. You get the content with an ID, and then you just create the file. And then you would put your site address in here, the folder path, and then you would pick display name and body, from the options that are here. And so it's a pretty simple flow that runs. But again, what this is doing, so you start with your query. Q takes that query, runs it, and puts it into the Raises Edge file system, and it updates it however often you want it updated. What this does now is pulls it from Raises Edge files and puts it into SharePoint. So once this queue runs, it's in SharePoint. I showed you the file. It's here. The file is here. Now it is available for use in Power BI. And to get that, let's just pop that up. And of course, nothing is super easy, but it's reasonably simple to work with this as well. So when you are in Power BI Desktop, and which I am using here, if you remember before, get data, we just typed in Blackbaud, got the standard connector. What this is going to do is we're going to be using a SharePoint folder. So we're going to click SharePoint folder, we're going to hit connect. And what that's going to do, ask us, well, which folder do you mean? And so we have to type in and you always have to make sure you don't misspell something. I think that's correct. And if you do, you'll get some kind of error message. But you put in the name of the folder, and it's going to pull up your SharePoint list. A couple of steps, again, these are outlined here, but once you get this list, you're going to click Transform Data. From Transform Data, now we have this list here, but we don't want all of these fields in our thing. Theoretically, you could pull them all at once. That'd be a big mess. So we just want one. We're going to unselect everything else. We're going to find the one field that we want, the BB Dev Days test query. We're going to hit OK. That's going to give me just that one file here. And from the one file, we're going to click these little two arrows. It says combine files. There's only the one there, but what it's really doing is pulling it into a table that can be used for Power BI. Everything looks good. We hit OK. And it chugs for minutes thinking about it. And hopefully, ka-ching. There we are. So again, it's just the one line. Normally, there'd be a whole line of data here. This is just some test information, but it shows you how it works. So you've got the information again, just as it came through Raises Edge. That's where they use this. Hang on. You're not seeing any of this, are you? I have to give you, hang on. I need to, once again, share a different screen. It didn't follow me. Sorry about that. All right, so what it did is it opened up this file under Transform Data with the Power Query Editor is really all this is. And so this just gives you the query option here. It shows you what's already been done. And if you're like me, you're probably going to need to make a little data manipulation. For instance, for us, for whatever reason, sometimes our system record IDs have letters in them, and that messes it up because, as you can see, this is looking just for numbers. You'll get errors. You can change this to text and just replace it with text. And you can do the same thing here. You can change fields if you want. For instance, if you wanted to make this shorter, and this would be for display purposes. If you didn't want it that big, we could just replace the value with something else. Whatever you want. Just like any data, any table in Power BI, you can set it up the same way. Do the data manipulation, get it set up so that what's here is what you're going to want in your report, that it's displaying the way you want, that the fields are ready for what you need to. And again, you can change, you can do all sorts of things. You can change the names here, do all the things that you normally would do. Because once that's completed, you're just going to hit close and apply. And again, I have to just go back to that screen. Let's see if it's loading right now. It's loading. Nope, that's the wrong screen. Here we go. Let's try this one. All right. So what it has done, it has now generated a new report, or it's taken that report, and it's giving me this data set here to work with. So this is my query one, and these are the fields that I had chosen, the ID numbers, some attributes, total number of gifts, last gift, name, address, status, and then again, another ID that's there. It's in alphabetical order. You could also, if you needed to connect this to gifts or to, like I say, another query, you can take a couple of queries, and I've used that in that way as well. And And again, what that helps you to do is to kind of pre-sort through the data. So for instance, if you've got something with a specific custom field or attribute and you want that isolated in its own group, and you want to maybe compare that to the similar information with a separate one, I use as many as 3 queries in one of these reports, but the number again is arbitrary. It would just show up. You just do the same thing. You would get each query separately. It's going to get them prepped. It's going to show up here as the query results, and all of this data now is available. So if I'm setting up a bar graph, again, it doesn't really matter what the chart is. Again, the x-axis, if I want, whatever it might be, if I'm doing just do a count of this. Actually, I need to probably do it differently for that, but you get the idea. Any of the data sets here, excuse me, any of the data sets are available for your report that you can put in here, and you can set those up any way that you would like to do that. Did I miss anything? So I guess in a nutshell, that's how it works. In practice, it went a little slower than that, but that's basically the setup. And I guess if we'll just start with any questions, if it's there, anything that I can go back to. We have a fair amount of time if that is there. I don't know if you see anything, Erin. Oh, maybe I should look. I'm not seeing the Q&A though right now. I'm still not seeing it.
In the chat, Reuben, and I think you answered it already. It was related to, if I could only export this queue running on a schedule to the hosted folders in Blackbaud. That was in the chat. I believe you clarified.
Right. So the question. So and it's correct. You can only export them to Blackbaud folders, but that's where the Power Automate comes in. It's pulling the information from Blackbaud and it's going to pull it into SharePoint. So that's why it's that really a 4-step process. Create the query. I use Q to update the data in that Blackbaud file. Power Automate moves it to SharePoint, and then Power BI pulls it out of SharePoint and uses it for the report. So your report stays updated then with current data, and you could theoretically run it, every half hour if you wanted to, but I just run it once a day, usually at night, to avoid any conflicts and other things. Yeah, sorry about the connections, the flipping back and forth there. I should have been watching the notes here. Is there something that you would like to see that that you didn't catch there? Not seeing any requests for that. So yeah, that again, I was in practice. This went a lot longer than that. So I don't really have anything else. It's a reasonably simple process. I think it can serve folks well, and give it a try if you haven't used this already. But that is all that I have.
Thank you, Reuben, for helping simplify the complex here. Sounds like it's quite your superpower. Feel free to continue to add any questions you have to the chat. I will go ahead and submit the survey, and just a kind reminder to please complete the survey, provide your feedback. We value it certainly.
And again, all of the slides or the steps are available. They're reasonably straightforward, even if you weren't able to see all of it on the screen. That's just my use of the screen share. It was like screen switched and it didn't switch with me. But yep, it'll also be in the recording. Otherwise, you're welcome to everyone. Thanks again for coming, and
Yes.
Yeah, good luck. I should also say that if you do have any issues with this, as I mentioned in my last session, and this is, as I said, pretty straightforward. You shouldn't, but if you did, just send me an email. I'll be glad to help troubleshoot it for you. Just because, it's just good information for folks to have.
This recording will be available within 24 hours, probably sooner.
All right. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you, Reuben.